Welcome to this show, Arteonics. This is a name coined by Waldemar Cordeiro, who is included in this show, but we'll come to him later. The idea of this show was to complement, explain as a sort of smaller and more concise version of the show at the Tate at the moment, Electric Dreams. So the idea is to show the importance of the computer and electronics in the works basically from the 1960s. This piece by Boriani, it's hard to see. What we are going to do is every evening turn down the light so these pieces, including light, will come into their own. But it's a very complex early idea driven by a form of computer. He was part of the Arte Programmata, which was a group of artists coming out of Italy in the early 60s. They include Gabriele Devecchi, which is incredibly simple but complex and really beautiful. It's basically a right angle with a triangle, a mirrored right angle with a glass triangle just going round and round and round, which sort of has so many references to other artists. Marina Apollonio, who's also in the Tate, and just very simple, visual, sort of almost Duchampian as it turns round. And then there is this extraordinarily beautiful Giovanni Anceschi, and then the last of the sort of, then you have Grazia, Varisco. All these are from the early 60s and just interesting, you know, everything is so ahead of its time. And then there is Lucia Di Luciano, who's also in the Tate show. This is Indian ink, but it's like you rather imagine it as a computer program. They're very sexy in a way. That is basically the Italian group. Then we have Vera Molnár, who sadly died just before her 100th birthday, about a year ago now. And then this is one by Waldemar Cordeiro. The complexity, this must be the sort of holy grail of computer art. When you look at it, how it must have taken him weeks to do. And the size, you've got to realize that these were printed on huge industrial computers that were mainly in universities and hospitals, and they only had access to them late at night. And the artists who were using it, Vera Molnár, felt that the computer work was much more important than all the drawings or the painting she did to get to that. Robert Mallary, who was a very interesting artist before and worked a lot in resin, and he did a piece for the World's Fair in 1964, I think it was, commissioned by Philip Johnson, who also commissioned Warhol and Rosenquist, amongst others. He poisoned himself with all the chemicals he was using, and he was told to leave New York and not be within 50 miles of any big city or town. And so he landed up in Massachusetts, quite close to Springfield. So he then got into computer work. And in the Tate, there's a piece we sold them, probably the first computer-generated sculpture. And most people thought he died in 1965 when he left New York, but he lived another nearly 30 years, I think. So a lot of people didn't know who he was. And then here are two more. It's just extraordinary, the complexity of these computer drawings. So then we go over here, and we have Morellet. Now, this comes from the telephone book series, where he took pages and just one screen represents the names and telephone numbers. And then we have this Raimund Girke, which is so unbelievably complex to paint, but it looks like sort of velvet or something. It's really extraordinary. We have Struycken, who the first time I saw his work was in a marvelous couple called Ike, who had a beautiful little moated castle outside Maastricht, and they had him do the whole of her dining room. The other thing about Struycken is his brother is the giant in the Adams family. I can't remember his name, but that's his brother. Julio Le Parc. And this painting really looks three-dimensional, but it's only two-dimensional. We have Liliane Lijn, who has a whole room at the Tate. Now, these are so peaceful. How it's done is that you have the cone, then you slice the cone at an angle, and then you put a sheet of perspex, and so the yellow, red, and then put the thing back together again. But it gives, it's so peaceful, whereas some of the noise from the other ones isn't that peaceful. These should be put in a whole lot of public places to calm people down. But it just, the simplicity but the complexity is so beautiful on it. It's really amazing. Von Graevenitz, now, whereas he was a great friend of Morellet's, well, Morellet was all completely mathematical. Graevenitz is completely by chance, and it just plays, and it will find its own way, and then it gets stuck and it unsticks itself. But there's again a sort of peace from chaos, whereas this is rather less peaceful, but not chaotic. Last three artists, there is Analivia Cordeiro, who is the daughter of Waldemar Cordeiro, and she is a ballet dancer as well as a sculptor, a computer sculptress. And so these are both Pele kicking a ball and the whole motion. And so there's a little video playing the whole time explaining, you do a video of it, and then you break it down, and then you 3D print it. But it's extraordinary to think that this is one man's movement. Miguel Chevalier, who's one of the first sort of people to use computer graphic installations, and he's done a lot of show, in cathedrals and things around the world, in intersections, and these are sort of houseable pieces. And he's got an enormous amount of commissions coming up next year all over the place. Hugo Demarco, and this again is better later in the day. There's a ultraviolet lights down there which pick up these vibrating tennis rackets. But I think it makes a very easy, comprehensible show to understand how incredibly ahead of its time. All this in the 1960s, where technology really became a very important part. There was a great show at the LACMA called Art and Technology, and then there was the one at the ICA, Cybernetic Serendipity. But the things are well worth looking to it in depth. Should we put this one on a second? I think you get an idea when they're all singing away that it's a smells and bells, it could have been called. But I hope people can come and see it, and anyway, thank you. Happy Christmas and New Year.